Hey, what's up guys? UrAvgWarGamer is back with another video of World of Warships. And today, I'm going to be taking a look at top 5 most powerful Tech 3 cruisers that you can buy right now for free in the form of credits for their Tech 3 nations respectively. I will be explaining that why these cruisers are extremely powerful and they fit perfectly in today's meta of insane aircraft carrier spotting, as well as the hybrids, for example, like the Hildebrand that does extra spotting along with the overmatch that we have right now. Tons of 457mm guns, the battleship accuracy that has kind of gotten like crazy buff, for example, in the case of Colombo, Wisconsin, the Bungo, the Satsuma with Nevsky. I mean, I just name a lot of those battleships that have insane accuracy and the guns that just simply wreck the cruiser's armor plating of 30mm because of this overmatch of 30mm. So here's the reason why I would rate these top 5 cruisers to be perfectly viable in today's meta, and definitely they are pretty good. And these are very recently released ships as well. Some of them are a bit older, but some of them are pretty newer. For example, in this case that we have is Cerberus, which I will be explaining as well quickly. And I will also explain that why I would rate them at these numbers respectively. So at number 5, we have Cerberus. As you can see, we have a Commonwealth Tier 10 cruiser that just recently got released. I think it has gotten released, I think, in 2024, this year, if I'm not wrong. But even then, it's very, very good. I mean, I haven't seen many Cerberus, but I would say compared to Zhao, Cerberus feels a lot much more viable in this meta. There is a pretty good reason for that. Now, you do have, just like Zhao, 12 guns, 203mm guns, but the reload time is decent. The reload time is better than Zhao at 9.2 seconds of reload time with the main battery mod 3. Now, you usually take Zhao with the range mod on this upgrade 6. Well, you don't need to do that on Cerberus. Your range is already at 18 km. And if you put the Zhao with the range mod, you can get it up to like more than 18 kilometers, but I think the 18 is pretty decent. And considering this Cerberus having more HP than Zhao, okay, and I also do have exhaust smoke generator to just cover itself in smoke and still be able to farm. And I don't remember the smoke firing penalty. It's not too bad. I mean, you can say that it's actually pretty decent. As you can see, 7.3 kilometer is definitely pretty viable. So you can just farm a lot of those stuff without getting spotted in smoke. Definitely makes it way above Zhao, at least in my opinion. I mean, you don't need to fear of getting overmatched, at least if you are in smoke. Only the thing that matters is if some cruiser or maybe a destroyer might be able to radar you in smoke, but I think that usually won't be happening and you won't be getting spotted in smoke. Just like I said, your spotting after main battery firing guns in smoke is 7.3 kilometers. So that is actually pretty impressive considering you have these 203mm guns. For example, Des Moines has like 8.4 or 8.7 kilometer if he fires in the smoke. Cerberus is definitely better. Also, why it is also really good. Now, this is very special, at least against submarines. Also, if you do hit submarines, I think the Cerberus will be a lot much more beneficial to you if you get it right now, because this has submarine surveillance. You do have 8 kilometer submarine spotting at maximum and periscope depth. So, I mean, if the submarine is really thinking of just getting going below down to the depths of the water and thinking they will be able to disengage against submarines, the Cerberus, this is not going to happen. So you do have a counter, and most submarines have either 10 kilometer ping range or the homing torpedoes. So Cerberus can be pretty powerful against those submarines. And you do also have battleship level of maximum range. This is one of those cruisers that having better, I would say, range of using the ASW strikes. And then you also have 3 attack flights. So these are not 2, 3 slightly nerfed bombs compared to the battleships 4900. We have 3900 in Cerberus, but then you have 3 attack flights. So you can see here it's a perfect package for a unique cruiser like Cerberus to deal with against submarines. Now, compared to Zhao, it might not be that good with the torpedoes. You do only have 4 torpedoes on each side compared to Zhao's like 12 torpedoes. So definitely that's where Zhao is a lot better. I don't remember the Zhao torpedo in total, but I think it's having a lot much more significantly better than Cerberus. But again, Zhao has worse torpedo detection. Cerberus still have enough range I would say better range at 13.5 kilometer compared to Zhao. Your detection is also pretty decent at 1.3 kilometer. Reaction time, as you can already see, it's 7.5 seconds versus Zhao, I think, slightly more than 8.5 seconds. Definitely makes Cerberus torpedoes very good, at least at self-defense. I'm not a fan of torpedoes, and the guns, the reliability that you have in the smoke that you can utilize, definitely makes Cerberus a really viable choice in today's meta. And moreover, why Cerberus is still also pretty good, if you are starting to understand the overmatch mechanics, well, you will find out that this armor plating that Cerberus gets is definitely very good. You have 32mm armor thickness, right? And the reason why it at least exists, I mean, it does have 30mm armor plating, which is definitely vulnerable to overmatch if you started to open water, shoot once you don't have smoke. But again, if you bait the armor, you will be able to just bounce 457mm caliber guns or below pretty easily. I mean, sure, you do have bow plating of 25mm, but again, you do have smokes. You do have this really good utility, having 4 smokes, and you do have this these heals with better HP than Zhao. Just like I said, very comparable to the Des Moines or Hindenburg. Really makes Cerberus very, very viable, at least if I think so. And I believe that if you pick Cerberus, it's going to be pretty strong in the random battles as well as probably in ranked battles, although it does not have access to radar. But still, overall, I find it very, very strong cruiser with this reload time, the fire chance at number 10. Oh, sorry, at number 5. At number 4, we have a Dutch heavy cruiser that I would say pretty much viable in today's meta as well, just like I have talked about the Cerberus. And the reason why the Gouden Leeuw is good at number 4 is because the speciality that it gets. The uniqueness of having HE bomb airstrikes. They kind of work like submarine airstrikes, but these are HE bombs. You have bombs in payload, you have tons of bombs, and well, Gouden Leeuw, I will talk about the legendary mod of the Gouden Leeuw, and that's what really makes it a lot much more powerful than before. It's sort of an upgrade once you use the legendary mod, which is going to be found in the equipment section, which you can see in the slot 6 here. But let's talk about the guns itself and the survivability. Now, it's a heavy cruiser that have a 60 seconds of fire duration. I remember it does also have access to only battle cruiser dispersion, so it's not like a cruiser dispersion, unfortunately, but still having pretty decent sigma. I don't exactly remember the sigma, but the guns are still pretty relevantly viable at having the 283mm guns, which at least overmatch. That's a benefit that I will explain here. The overmatching of 16mm cruisers like Minotaur, Smolensk, Colbert, or at least any cruiser that having 16mm plating will going to get overmatched by these guns, so they're not going to get bounced, right? So the AP is pretty decent, the alpha damage is decent, the HE having decent alpha damage as well with 20% fire chance. So the fire chance is pretty decent, just like in the case of Cerberus. Your alpha damage is also quite a lot better because these are 283mm guns. Your survivability actually gets improved because you have to use these air strikes. You can always play it a bit aggressively, try to go behind the covers, and then since you do have this legendary mod, which really makes it really powerful, I would say the Gouden Leeuw gets such an upgrade that it actually able to get in this list. This upgrade really is a game changer. Not only that you will get extra airstrike, which you are currently seeing right now, you usually get 2 attack flights. And these bombs are pretty disgusting, I'm telling you. If there is a Thunderer, or for example the French battleships out there, or the cruisers in general, that having only 32mm plating, well, they are not gonna like these bombs. And especially any island hugger like Des Moines or Stalin even. Like Stalin is having some armor which is 50mm, but then they are insane in setting fires at 39% fire chance. Your alpha is pretty good, at least against Conquerors or poor Thunderers, or maybe the French ships like Republic, Bourgogne, etc. They will be very, very powerful, and you also going to get the better airstrike armament reload time by minus 25%, which get it up to like 60, almost 60 seconds, almost a minute of reload time. So you can only imagine that you can have so many airstrikes in a single game. This really makes Gouden Leeuw a lot much more comfortable because you can use the islands as cover if you are low in HP. Okay? And hence it will be a lot much more viable in today's meta. I mean, again, I'm just telling you, the armor might not look exactly as good and you are going to be vulnerable to be overmatched. As you can see here, you do have 30mm plating. You do have this upper belt, like in the case of Cerberus, 32mm, but this is only like slightly, layered at 40mm side armor, so it's not gonna be that much powerful compared to the Cerberus. But again, this won't be overmatched. But again, I have felt a lot much more taking damage in the Gouden Leeuw once there's going to be a huge overmatch issue. But again, you can always go behind the islands. You can use this, whatever I call it, that legendary mod, and can just use it as cover, and you just farm so much damage even without using guns. That Gouden Leeuw sits really nicely as a specialized cruiser. It's not like for everyone, and that's the reason why I would give you a disclaimer here. But again, if you get comfortable with these airstrikes, I'm telling you, you started to get addicted with the Gouden Leeuw. It's gonna get very much addiction. It's gonna get a lot much more of an addiction to play this ship, because how much you will be able to abuse these airstrikes and utilize the guns to set fires. You set the fire, someone DCP, and you set like double or triple perma fires. If you're able to perfectly airstrike these with the HE bombs, this will get a lot much more disgusting. Also, one more disgusting thing, I won't say disgusting, but at least very strong thing about the Gouden Leeuw is that if you use the islands as cover very aggressively, then you fear of the entire, or maybe the spotting. Now, the thing is, your cover must be good, and once you do have a good cover, maybe it might be blown by a carrier, but again, it has really good anti-defense. Your anti-defense rating is very, very powerful, that it gets up to 91. With defensive fire, you will get this up to even more. And I'm telling you, if someone like a carrier, a good carrier player, even tries to do drop on a Gouden Leeuw, even the FDR player, a good FDR player, will also going to be fearing the Gouden Leeuw might be able to still chew down a lot of planes, and especially the average or below average players, they will definitely gonna be feeling a lot much more pain and suffering. They will be losing a lot more planes, and the flag is definitely can get a bit more of an issue for those poor players, because again, you do have still some shell explosions in a salvo. So with that said, I would say Gouden Leeuw is pretty decent. I mean, your concealment is also very good considering it's a heavy cruiser. I mean, it does have 60 seconds of fire duration, but again, if you use the islands as cover very effectively, then you don't need to take direct damage from battleships, because you can use the airstrikes during that time, which I have said. And the firing range also does not need to be that high, because you're going to be playing it a bit aggressive behind the islands, and you will be able to drop those poor cruisers and taking their HP off pretty insane way possible. And your concealment is also like around 10.5 or 10 kilometer. I don't remember the concealment, but I have built it up with the, I would say, what do you call it, the heavy HE sap shells. That's why the concealment is high. But even then, your concealment is still below 12 kilometers. So that's what really Gouden Leeuw is about. Legendary mod is a must if you really want to make Gouden Leeuw a lot much more powerful than before. And I would definitely rate it at number 4 because of all the aspects that I have explained in this video. So definitely watch out for that at number 4. At number 3, and I would say this should not be a surprise to you guys, that I would rate the Jinan, which is a Pan-Asian light cruiser that is actually also going to get buffed in the next patch. And I'm not sure, and I don't know the reason why, that UrAvgWarGaming is kind of obsessed with buffing the Jinan over the couple of months. They have buffed the Jinan with the shell velocity, they have also buffed the reload time, and they are now again going to buff Jinan again. It started to get a lot much more fearsome cruiser at number 3. The reasons why Jinan is powerful, well, first of all, it does have insane DPM. You do have only low caliber destroyer guns, which is 127mm guns, but then as you can see here, the HE DPM is pretty decent. Your firing range is pretty decent, and again, to counter this spotting meta and tons of the overmatch that you get from those poor battleships, also I would say poor cruisers, well, it also have a smoke. A smoke that is pretty good as well. These are Yang smokes that having pretty much, decent action time as well as the dispersion time, and they will reload relatively quickly, and that's what makes Jinan really powerful. After the short burst smokes of what you find on Daring, or maybe on the Z-42, which is a steel resource ship, I think these smokes are the second best smokes in my opinion, and Jinan gets 4 of them, okay? Not only that the Jinan going to get buffed with the HP, which will go up to like 39,000. I mean, they have increasing the HP from 30,700 to 32,500. I mean, I'm talking about the base HP pool. So you can see here, it's also going to get some survivability buff, which will make it up to like 39,000, more than 39,000 with this fully built Jinan, as well as you also going to not only get the fire chance, but you are also going to get the increase in alpha. As you can see here, it has 1800 alpha. It will go up to 1900 alpha, and your fire chance is already 11.5%. Okay, that is really good considering the amount of shells that you throw. And what's the funny part is, they are increasing 2% fire chance increase. This cruiser will have a fire chance of 13.5%. And you know what that means is? Let me show you. Like, this is so stupid. This is so ridiculous that if I just compare it to Des Moines, the base fire chance of Des Moines is, guess what? 14%. And the Jinan, with having so much, DPM and so many shells that you can throw at a target, having a fire chance of what? Give me a second. This is a Yang. It having a fire chance of 13.5. Are you kidding me? You started to make Jinan a ridiculous ship if you push onto its smoke. And why I'm saying this, that pushing on a Jinan is going to be a death sentence for any ship, at least any cruiser or battleship. Well, simply because it has access to deep water torpedoes. These torpedoes will never ever going to get detected. You will have never a good reaction time. You have 4.1 seconds of reaction time. Your torpedo alpha is also, by the way, going to get buffed to 18.8. So they're trying to matching the alpha damage of that of Yang. It's actually having less than 18,000 alpha damage on the torpedoes, okay? Yang having 18.8k alpha on torpedoes, so they are actually going to match the Jinan torpedoes. And you drop so many fucking torpedoes, you have 20 torpedoes, okay? So you throw 10 torpedoes on each side. And your torpedo firing angles is also amazing. And you do also have access to torpedo reload booster? Oh my god. What are you thinking, Wargaming? Why are you obsessed in just buffing this Jinan so much that it's not even funny anymore? It started to get actually sort of overpowered cruiser if you know how to dodge the torpedoes in smoke, because it does not have access to hydro. And you also do have defensive fire to defend against carriers. I mean, sure, the Malta can be able to citadel you with the AP bombs. Sure, it does have some armor that just can simply get overmatched by Yamato or Satsuma or incomparable. Any battleship that does have 460mm or above can overmatch. It is definitely true. I mean, armor is definitely very paper. But again, just like I said, with the Cerberus, you do have 32mm plating on the side. And I am telling you, if you're able to utilize this side armor properly, you can still tank quite well. And I'm telling you, I have done that many times on those poor battleships that I have tried to push or at least try to shoot the Jinan. It's not going to be really viable for them. You actually going to see that these battleships will be able to bounce this from this armor. Okay, so it's actually somewhat of a good armor if you know what you're doing. And that's the reason why with this really insane DPM, the torpedoes that you do have, like the reload time is 96.4 seconds. That's like the similar torpedoes reload time that you find on Yang, but instead you have 20 torpedoes, 10 on each side, and then you also have, just like I said, torpedo reload booster. What the heck? And you do have now slightly more tankiness with the heals as well as from the HP that it's getting buffed. You started to see here that any ship that pushes the Jinan is a retard player. He's gonna be retarded. I have to use these words, guys. I'm sorry. I excuse if I use some sort of words. I just really don't understand the buffs of Jinan, and I start to get ranted out a bit. I'm sorry, guys, but I mean it started to look so powerful. Your concealment, as I said, I might not have said before, but again, 9.8 kilometer. Your speed is 37 knots, pretty decent, and your anti-defense is pretty decent with defensive air fire. So again, the same thing, you will be able to disengage in the smoke, and you do also have this insane DPM. Your range is very viable, considering that you have smoke and you get good concealment. It started to get absurd. to the levels that I would say it's gonna be now borderline broken. I don't really know. What do you guys think? That but I felt that Jinan is gonna be a Smolensk, almost a Smolensk without radar. Oh, sorry, without the hydro. Okay, it's almost like a Smolensk in a Tech 3 cruiser at tier 10. If you have a dream of getting Smolensk, considering getting the Jinan, and even if you've taken so much damage over time, you might not have enough HP. Only consider using the torpedoes only, and you will be a really good torpedo boat, better than Kitakami. I mean, Kitakami having really bad guns, and Jinan also having really good guns with also deep water torpedoes that can hit cruiser, battleship, and carriers. You got the really good package at number 3, guys. You should try the Jinan after the buffs, and you will eventually say that the amount of fires that you will be getting on Jinan with these insane amount of shells that you will throw, even though they might be low caliber. Go figure it out. At number 3, definitely play Jinan. It's gonna be so much fun. Absolutely worth it at number 3. At number 2, well, I would say this is my personal opinion, but I started to feel a lot, the Nevsky viable at number 2 compared to Des Moines. I mean, I can easily replace it with Des Moines for sure, which is an American heavy cruiser. But why Nevsky? Why I want to rate Nevsky at number 2? It's a Tech 3 cruiser, light cruiser that you can grind, the Russian light cruiser that you can grind. Why is it the case? Well, it's all about the very less risk that you can have in Nevsky once you are shooting the guns at around 19 kilometer, and the shell velocity that it has, and the utility that it gets. Okay, the radar is an extremely powerful utility, right? This can really make the game impact, maybe at the start by killing destroyers, maybe spotting them at really crucial times, or maybe at the late stages where the destroyers are remaining, and that's where Nevsky is going to be pretty good. Their UDPM is actually really not the best. I mean, it does have okay DPM. I mean, it's kind of having very much similar level of DPM compared to the Cerberus, which I have talked about at number 5. But why Nevsky? Nevsky is all about comfortable shell arcs, the less sort of risk that you have to take when you are at long ranges to take on against battleships. You're going to be very much easy sitting at the back damage farmer. You don't need to take many risks at the start of the game, and you're still having enough range at 19 kilometer with this really good shell velocity, okay, and really good DPM with really good fire chance. I mean, maybe the HE Alpha might not be the best for these 180mm guns. The caliber also might not be low, or might not be that good, I would say. But again, the AP pen at close ranges, at least when you started to having the broadside of light cruisers and cruisers at 12-11 kilometers, that's where Nevsky is gonna still shine. It's not gonna be that bad. The shell velocity, the penetration of AP is still pretty really good, okay? But the comfort that you can get with this good HP pool and the really sort of decent acceleration if you are at long ranges trying to speed juke the battleship shells, and not just taking that much risk at the start of the game, really makes Nevsky pretty viable in a kiting compared to maybe the Des Moines, maybe I would say Henry, even though Henry might be a better farmer at long ranges, but I would still say the Nevsky having very easy shell velocities that you can get comfortable with. You do have some self-defense torpedoes, but I won't talk about that. I will also gonna talk about the concealment. The concealment, considering that it does have really decent long range, firing range, is pretty still good. The maneuverability, as you can see, get it up to like 38 knots. The rudder shift is, I would say, not the best with the turning circle, but again, anti-defense with defensive wave fire, with this 6.9 kilometer firing range, is what really makes Nevsky a lot much more less riskier compared to, for example, the Jinan, for example, the Gouden Leeuw, even, for example, if you take Cerberus. Cerberus might be a bit less risky as well compared to Nevsky, but again, you just play at long ranges and you will just farm so much damage that I have to just rate it compared to Des Moines better, at least in this current meta. Unless they may be able to nerf the spotting, it's gonna be a lot much more powerful, okay? Overall, maybe the really good players can utilize the Des Moines well, and I would still say Des Moines having some sort of niche that cannot be replaced by any other cruiser in this game. But again, the easiness that you get on the Nevsky is something that you will never going to get in any cruiser in this game. The comfortable shell arcs, the comfortable farming style in kiting way, it's just a good package, guys. You just try it out and you will be finding out that if you play it at long ranges, there's no one that can do anything about you. Maybe the carriers, but again, you will be in kiting and then you will be having defensive air fire if you need it. Although you can also use the hydro, but the defensive air fire is actually going to be pretty disgusting because again, shell explosions are 8, like Gouden Leeuw. The damage output of the A might not be that good, but again, defensive fire, average and maybe below average, aircraft carrier will definitely going to get their planes shredded down. So that's what really matters mostly, at least at random metals. And hence the reason why, because of this full complete package that it gets, with this AP pen that it gets, I would still definitely gonna rate it better. Now, armor is pretty not good at all. Like it has only 30mm deck, which again, the prevalence of so much overmatch by 457mm guns, and even 406mm guns can't even overmatch that, means that you have to play it less riskier, okay? So if you do that, you will be having a lot much more comfort, and I would definitely gonna rate Nevsky better at number 2, just because of the radar as well, just like I said. So definitely watch out for this cruiser at number 2. At number 1, I think everyone should be expecting this Russian heavy cruiser, which is kind of the tanky Nevsky, or I would say very much, tankier like battleship playstyle at number 1. I would say it shouldn't be a surprise for a lot of you players out there. And Petro definitely is very, very strong in today's meta. In the meta in which there is so much overmatch that we have, Petro armor is really resilient to all the overmatch in this game. You have 40mm armor, deck armor, the side armor, the small superstructure, and you do have the guns that will behave like battleship, that will citadel like battleship at medium ranges, at close ranges, and then your accuracy with the legendary mod, which I will explain it, that is a game changer for Petro, really makes Petro something that no one will ever be able to get sort of this title, this battleship title for a Tech 3 cruiser in this game. It is so powerful, right? You have the guns that kinda having very low caliber at 220mm. Your AP damage per minute is also okay, but the HE shell damage per minute is like anemic. But the guns, if you're able to shoot at broadside cruisers, you're just gonna smash them. You do have, I would say, reduced arming threshold like Stalingrad. You do have AP angles like Stalingrad, even though it's slightly worse, but still enough good that you will just going to citadel battleships with this insane AP pen. And again, the legendary mod is again a game changer. The Petro sort of a weakness that they have given is the more that you play at long ranges, the more, if you play it like Nevsky, for example, the more the dispersion will be worse, okay? Okay, so that's the dispersion pattern that it gets, okay? So at close ranges, it will be having an insane dispersion. Like, it is so accurate dispersion that all the shells might hit onto almost the same area where you have expected to land those shells at, okay? And then we have, and then Wargaming has introduced the legendary mod, okay? Not only that they improved the AP alpha, which is the strength of Petro already, to 7.3 alpha from like 6.3, you also have the main battery shell dispersion by -10%, guys. So, oh my goodness. This legendary mod Petro makes the gun so absurd that I don't have even the words. You can just try and utilize the legendary mode and you will say, oh my goodness, I'm just getting 20k salvos on a broadside cruisers and even battleships with 15k salvos with this, better alpha that it gets with the legendary mod, that it started to get a lot much more really bad for the enemy team if they broadside. You're just gonna be citadeling so much consistently that this battleship, or I would say this cruiser, is extremely powerful, okay? Even in 2024, as like I said, you have very small superstructure. You do have some armor plating of 25mm, but again, it's not that big of an area. And then the back area is something that no one will shoot at once you are bow in position. And then you do have Citadel, which is slightly raised. It used to be actually slightly, in the water, but now they actually buff, or I would say nerfed, the armor in some way. I don't remember the name. What do you call it? If I'm not wrong, yeah, I remember it. It's called as freeboard. Okay, so its freeboard is sort of a lot much more lower in the water, but then they have nerfed it. They have actually countlessly nerfed the Petro. It used to have absurd concealment. I mean, it used to have like 12.4 kilometer concealment. Then they have got it up to like 12.7 or something, and then now the Petro has 13.2 kilometer concealment. So now, just like Nevsky, it also has access to radar, so you can counter destroyers. It has all those short action time, but again, you do have a radar on a battleship sort of hull, okay? Almost a battleship hull that only have a fire duration of 30 seconds, okay? For example, in the case of Gouden Leeuw, I've talked about, it has 60 seconds of fire duration. Petro still retains 30 seconds of fire duration with so much tankiness that you can just stay bowing in on a battleship and you will be able to tank them for days. You still have very good HP at 55,000, and even though you might argue that you are losing some consumable, you will be losing one ship consumable on each slot of that, particular speciality of consumable, but still, if you do have Kuznetsov, you will be getting slightly more HP, just because if you get to below 10%, your Kuznetsov is just simply going to get activated and you will be getting extra DCP and you will be just healing some HP. And then you survive for long. Really, what makes Petro even more busted? The Kuznetsov is so good that just makes Petro strengths even more. Like, you put the legendary mod, you buffing the Petro. You put the Kuznetsov, you're buffing the Petro. Then you put the surveillance upgrade, you're just gonna simply buffing the Petro to the levels that it easily get with this insane penetration. You just literally have to check it yourself. Maybe I can make a video if you really want the Petro gameplay, and you will eventually find out that how consistent the guns are and how consistent it will Citadel, and it will just absolutely punish the hell out of the cruisers or even battleships if they show a bit of a broadside at 13, 14, even 15 kilometers. And I won't even say, under 10 kilometers, because it will be just filthy and disgusting penetration and the dispersion at those close ranges, that I would rate Petro to be one of the best cruisers that Wargaming has added for Tech Tree ships ever, and very viable in this today's meta, where it will be resistant to the overmatch and having really good defensive AA defense with 6.6 kilometer firing range, making it at number 1 without a shadow of doubt. Very impressive cruiser, regardless, having very high game impact because of the radar and the guns, at number 1. So that's it for the video of today. For the top 5 tactical cruisers, I hope you find it interesting as well as very valuable. I might have missed a couple of things, I'm sure of that. I mean, there are so many things of a particular cruiser that you might not be able to remember every single one of that. I can understand that, but again, if I have missed out something, if I have done some mistakes, please, accept my apologies. I'm not perfect. But I can make mistakes, but I'm not making mistake at just positioning these cruisers respectively. They are very powerful for today's meta, and I would say grind them first if possible. They will be so much enjoyable, a lot much more easier to play because of the consumables that it gets and some sort of survivability against carriers, as well as from the spotting that it gets. Really, I would say makes it better. I mean, I could also really rate Des Moines here, but I find Des Moines to be a lot much more difficult to play in this today's meta. At least in random battles. Maybe you can say in competitive environment it would be a lot much more different, where there are no carriers or submarines. So that's where it's going to be a bit different. But again, I will just take out the Des Moines for a bit now, and I would rate some other cruisers to be there for all of you players to grind. And if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. And if you have anything to say, please also let me know in the comments section. And until then, I will catch you guys into the next video. Peace out.